Hey everyone, let's try this again. I'm going to try and do my best to walk you guys through a rebuild and some info on these John Deere DLTX single barrel carburetors. They're kind of tricky. They're different from your normal carburetor, like an updraft, and they're different from a duplex, which is a two-barrel John Deere carburetor. So I'm just going to kind of show you what I do whenever I go through one of these. So you can pretend all of this is together. This is actually a gentleman's I'm working on for him. So the first thing I do whenever I get any carburetors, I completely strip them down and take them apart. So you'll pull the bowl nut off, which is that. When normally after that you're going to get a spring that comes out like that, which actually goes up inside there. After you pull that out, your bowl's going to come off like so. And there's two plugs on either side. Those are actually called float pin bearings. You're going to want to pull those out, and I actually have those here somewhere, the old ones. I think I'm getting new ones for him. So there's one there and one there. That actually has the float pin left on it. His are marred up, so I'm ordering new ones. So if you can do it without marring yours up, you can reuse them. There's nothing wrong with that. And pull those out. Sometimes they need a little heat taken to them. Propane can work if they're really stuck, but it takes a long time for propane. Oxyacetylene works the best. I've also heard those MAP gas torches can work too. I'd like to give them a shot because I can't afford an oxyacetylene torch. So I'm looking at getting a MAP gas set up to give it a shot. So at that point, you have in here a seat. Well, normally, I hate doing this looking through the camera here. This is sitting on top of that, just like that. Well, it's not sitting, it's screwed in. So you unscrew it, and it's actually screwed in to your seat. So your seat's right here, and it sits in there just like that. So you'll unscrew it. That's a 5/8 wrench or ratchet, whatever you want to call it. Pull it out. Now your needle and your float, which here's your float, can come out. I don't have the needle. His was trash, and I've lost it. But those can come out, and then your drain petcock, which is in the very bottom of your bowl, it's that smaller hole there, that can come out. And I think that's a 3/8 or a 7/16 wrench. No big deal, those are normally easy to get out. So at this point, you're left with the top of the carburetor. So you pull out your choke and your throttle butterfly plate. So there's one. And here's the second one. You pull those out, and they're just tiny flathead screws. Pull them out, make sure you keep them in order which one is which. And you can pull your shafts out normally. Well, this one, here's the choke. These later style single barrels, the choke setup has a cap over it and a screw and all that. You just take them loose, pull everything out. And then, of course, here's your, this is his old throttle one. I may end up reusing this because it's in really good shape. So you can pull that out. And then you're now to the point of getting to your drill plugs. So your drill plugs, you can kind of see there's two holes right there. Right there. There's one there and one there. On the older style carbs, especially for the all fuels, there's another plug right here that's called your economizer plug. That can come out too. Ooh, my wife's going to kill me. Here's a couple other drill plugs. Sorry for the bad camera work here. There's one there. There's one there. You can also pull out your needles, which are those right there, those long things. There's one on either side and those two larger holes. And pull those out. But back to the drill plugs. They are normally very stuck, and they are made of brass. So if they're really stuck, it never fails. You're gonna strip them out. The best thing to do is, once again, take oxyacetylene or something really hot to it and get them super hot. You don't want them red hot. Just almost till they're almost red hot, and then you pull the heat away. And you let them cool naturally, and normally they pop right out. They loosen right up. That heat really breaks down whatever's keeping them stuck in there. But guys, they really need to come out. I've seen other videos and other people say, oh no, those don't need to come out. They really do. If your carburetor's really not running right, you're never going to get it to run right if you don't thoroughly clean it. And there's passages down in here. You can't really see them, but they run all the way down. Matter of fact, this bottom one comes down to here. And then this one, if I remember correctly, connects this, and it runs down into here, if I remember right. Yeah, it goes into that one, which is also a drill plug. You have to clean them out. I mean, and no amount of solvent and just soaking it is going to do it, because it's normally rust and dirt. And you need to get that rust and dirt out. And they make special drill bits just for that. And you use them by hand. I got these from Robert's Carburetor Repair. You can buy them. They're not very expensive. And he sends instructions for which passages take which size drill bit. And you use them by hand, and you run them through there, and you just twist them. And then you can shoot them out with compressed air or carb cleaner, and then, to make sure they're clean even better, you do it again. And then after you go through all of these passages, so you've got those two there, you've got this one here. I think you can go ahead and run them down through here. I can't remember which size, but run them down through here, because I think one goes through that tiny hole, and then there's a couple small holes here that go, yep, there's one, that go down there. You want to make sure those are clean. So whenever you're comfortable that there's no more gunk in there, you can shoot them out with carb cleaner and compressed air. And there's another one. There's in this hole right here. There's a small hole in the inside of that you need to clean out. And I think the smallest drill bit will get to it just fine. So you can get that shot and cleaned out. And those are your idle passages. So if your carb's not idling right, or no amount of adjusting on the idle circuit, like whether you screw it in or out, it's running the same, that means it's not getting idle fuel. It's pulling everything through your load circuit, which is through your main nozzle, and that's all you're running off of. So get those clean, and it's going to run better, and you're actually going to have an idle circuit. So another thing I do, at this point, after I've stripped everything down, I take it to a sandblaster. My good buddy has one. And I sandblast everything. I sandblast this, get the paint and crud off of it, sandblast all that. I'll shoot just a little bit of it up into there, which normally your nozzle, I lost it. That thing, right? The big thing, long thing next to my screwdriver, is up in there. So you'll shoot around that to kind of get the junk out of there, because normally there's rust and dirt in there too. Clean everything up the best you can. Don't do the float. Do not do the float. And then essentially now you're ready to bring it home and reassemble. So at this point, if you haven't already, you can use a big punch. This is actually a special punch or drift, whatever you want to call it, made for this job. But it's made for removing your throttle shaft bushings. And your throttle shaft bushings, one's down here and one's up here. And here's one right here that I've already hammered out of this. So you insert your tool through the top here. It just can't see. Yeah, you put it in here and you hammer it. Use a ball peen or a hard plastic hammer and punch them out. And then your new ones can go in. And if they're a little tight, like because you want to test fit it by sliding your throttle shaft through it. If it's really tight and you can't turn it, you can put a reamer through them, or a little bit of sandpaper around, like a round shaft that's smaller than your throttle shaft, and lightly sand it, blow it out, clean it out with carb cleaner, and keep doing that until you get a nice solid fit that's not, where it's not moving around, but it can move freely. Okay, so now you're at that point. There's a felt packing that goes on top here. You can slide this back in, and then your throttle plate can go back in. Now, if I remember right, I got it here. That should be his throttle plate. If you look carefully, you can see the bottom. It's supposed to be perfectly round. This one isn't. You can see where it's worn, and because those from the factory, those bushings aren't a perfect flush fit, so they sit in the bottom and they wear as they turn, and eventually wears those down. So this one, there's no saving it. He's getting a new one. It's on its way. And you get a little better throttle response out of it whenever you fix them. They idle better. You seem to have a little better control. So then your choke stuff can go back in, which that's the choke plate. It's good. And if you didn't do it, and I forgot to mention this, I have some small wire. I think this is just like plant wire or just for tying flowers and stuff like that, but it's really small, but strong enough for my needs. And the inside here, and a matter of fact, you may need to do this before you put the throttle shaft in. You can't see them. There you go. Those two small holes there on the left side that's inside there, you want to make sure those are clean. And you can normally see your wire through this hole here if they are clean. And of course, whenever you're shooting carb cleaner and all that through it, you'll see a little bit of carb cleaner. You'll see a little bit of carb cleaner go through there, so you know that they're cleaned out. Those are your actual idle circuits. So whenever you're just sitting there idling along, fuel isn't being drawn up through your nozzle here. It's actually coming out just those two teeny tiny holes. Now, and I hadn't mentioned this yet because this can get kind of tricky depending on what tools you have. If you haven't been able to pull your nozzle yet, now's the time you want to pull your nozzle and go ahead and clean it out. So I told you normally the nozzle's stuck up in here. It's this piece right here. So it sits in there just like that, except up more where you can't see it. You can either get like a machine screw and a tap and thread it through and then pull it out that way. I think like a 10/24 or a 10/22 is, or a 10 something, I can't remember, is what these would take. But regardless, sorry, my screen just did something funny, so I lost my train of thought. But they do make a tool, and once again, from Robert's Carb Repair, this is a nozzle puller. So this, you take that nut off on the end. That's not the right one. I have the right one downstairs, but you thread it through, and with a pair of needle nose going through the top here, you get the correct end on, and then it's just a slide hammer. You just move it up and you hammer that down real good, and normally it pulls them right out. And that's why I said to sandblast up in there a little bit, because normally there's kind of a ring of crud in there that holds them in real good, and you don't want that. That's not good for anybody. If it's really stuck, you can apply a little bit of oxyacetylene or good focused heat around it for just a second, and then let it cool naturally, and that'll normally get them out. And of course, whenever you're cleaning your nozzle, whatever I did with it here, of course, it's right in front of me. Here we go. So most nozzles are going to look similar, but you can see teeny tiny holes. Normally they're caked up with a bunch of crap around them. I think half of these holes were covered up, so I used that wire back over here that I had showed you guys, and just poked everything out real good. Shot carb cleaner and compressed air through and made sure it was nice and clean through there, and it is. And it's ready to go back in now. So now you're basically reassembling now. See, that can go back up in there now. Your bowl can go back together, which, you're just reverse of what you did. Your float and needle can go in. You put your bearings and your float pin in. And then after you get your seat in, which your seat just drops right down in and screws in, remember that's a 5/8. The top, which is that, can screw back down into it. And these, if I remember right, if you're holding it upside down and you have a little ruler, from the lip of the carburetor, or the bowl here, and whenever it's raised all the way up, it's 3/8 of an inch from the top of this to the top of the bowl. This is a DLTX 71, so it's 3/8 of an inch, and that's how you know that your float level is set properly. There's a couple other variations, but I'm not going to get into it right now. So hopefully at this point you've got your bushings in, your nozzles at least sitting up in there, you've got new drill plugs, or you saved your old drill plugs and you can put all those back in. You can use a little aircraft grade thread sealer, which you can get at an auto parts store. Put around at least these two down here, because they like to seep a little bit. They'll either draw air or you'll get kind of like a little squirt of gas out of them while it's running. Just seal those up real good. And then your needles can go back in. And then obviously there's a drill plug there you'll want in. Your nozzle can sit back in there. Then your spring will sit on top of that. And then your bowl can go back on. And then your bowl nut can go back on. That right there. So now that everything's together, your gaskets are all in, which my cat just knocked the other gasket. Don't forget there's a gasket that goes around here. And then for your preliminary settings, for your load and idle needles, which are these, okay, you want to go about 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 turns out on your idle, and then about 1 full turn on your load. And whenever you do those, you screw them all the way in until they're lightly seated. You don't want to really cinch them down too hard because they'll damage the metal down here. Till they're lightly seated, and then you turn them out. So 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 on your idle. Don't worry, folks, we don't eat on this table. And then 1 turn on your load. Now it should be ready to go. You can get everything hooked back up. Obviously your fuel line is going to hook into there. And then you can hook it to your tractor, make sure nothing leaks, and give her a whirl. When you're adjusting them, you might want to make sure that your tractor is fully warmed up to operating temperature whenever you adjust them. And that's going to give you the best setting possible. So yeah. Sorry this video wasn't the best. I kind of wish I had a carburetor that was needing rebuilt and I could show you guys, but I hope this one works. I'm in the middle of redoing this one. It's pretty well ready to go back together once my parts come in. But I just want to reiterate, make sure you clean those passages out, guys. Get those drill plugs out, clean those passages, because on these John Deere carburetors, that is a big problem with what's wrong with them, is those passages aren't clean. And soaking them will not clean them. So be sure you clean those out and clean your nozzles. Pull those nozzles out and get those cleaned real good. So anyways, I hope I was some help. I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you.